Welcome back to the Dad in the Rock Aftershow. We're talking Sandman. This is Sean.
And this is Chris.
And tonight we're going to be talking about episodes 7 through 10, the final 4 episodes of season 1 of Netflix's The Sandman. And before we start here, we are Dad in the Rock. If you don't know us by now, please check out the channel on our YouTube page. We react to big movie trailers or TV show trailers that come out. We always do a good solid 10-minute reaction or so of those. And then we also cover full-length shows too, like this one, The Sandman. We've done shows in the past like Ted Lasso and WandaVision, all kinds of cool stuff. And coming up, we're going to be covering Andor, Lord of the Rings, the new Game of Thrones, all kinds of cool stuff. So now's the time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time to do it.
Hit that like, subscribe, and comment along the way. We love seeing your comments, and we respond to all of it. So let's go.
You and I started to talk about the final half of this season a little bit before we jumped on here. What are your overall thoughts of this half?
I liked it. There were some changes they made within the storyline, which I can understand why they did it because they were pushing the Corinthian so
Mm-hmm.
hard, and they made those changes for his character.
Right.
That's fine and dandy, but they made some other small changes along the way as well, which um they are what they are. We didn't get two characters that were in the actual graphic novel. They gave us a different one, the
Mm-hmm.
Nightmare within Jed's dreams. So there was a few things I kind of looked at. I'm like, I don't know, but I highly enjoyed it regardless.
Yeah, it was a fun watch. Like I told you, I didn't quite enjoy the second half as much as I did the first. I thought focusing on the singular story throughout 4 episodes, it felt both almost rushed and it was just strange because the pacing of the first half of the season, it really took its time to introduce you to this world, to each of the characters, to the concepts, and even had some crazy episodes. You compare that one episode in the diner versus him going to hell in the other episode versus episode 6, which was terrific. I love the variety, and how each episode was different and broad and open your eyes to expanding new ideas and new things each time. But to me, the second half, we were single laser focused on one story arc, and it felt like they took a whole season's worth of shows and kind of condensed them into 4 episodes.
And that's essentially what it was. Yeah, it was one story that could have easily been season 2.
Yeah. But we start out here with chapter 7 called The Doll's House. You'll have to enlighten me. I know the reference. I know that Unity has a dollhouse in her estate, and the camera spends some time on it. But what does the dollhouse represent? What am I
The
missing?
the dollhouse is essentially even the house that she moves into in Florida. If you think
Hmm.
of it that way, there's all these different people are living within the dollhouse. The dollhouse was given to her when she was a child. 'Cause this is a flashback to season episode 1 to season 1. She was the girl in bed that fell asleep.
Right.
So the dollhouse was there with her, and with her supposed to be the vortex, that was kind of the symbolism that they were using.
Oh, okay, I got you. That makes more sense if you compare the dollhouse to the bed and breakfast. I guess that can work on that level too. So yeah, we're introduced to Rose Walker, who's going to be almost our main character throughout the second half of the season.
Essentially, yeah, she is. There's no essentially about it. She is the main character, and
Yeah.
everyone else is a side character to her essentially.
Even Morpheus kind of takes a step back. And yeah, Rose Walker, she is separated from her brother pretty early on. You see, there's some disparity between her mother and father. They separate, and it just does not work out for these kids. I mean, Rose seems to be okay eventually. Her mom passes away, but she grows into a young adult that seems to have a good head on her shoulders and is able to take care of herself, as a good friend by the name of Lyda, who her husband passed recently, but they're kind of in this together. And she's trying to find her little brother again because they were separated, and her little brother is in not as good a shape.
Oh no, he found himself in a bad spot.
Yeah.
And basically he was $800. That's all he was. It doesn't matter what it was. And they tiptoed with this one because within the graphic novel, it is a lot rougher for him than they even showed within the series.
In the graphic novel, was it his father that was abusing him, or was it this Barnaby and,
No, it was the
oh,
same thing. They weren't, these two here were like family friends of his dad.
right.
Within the graphic novel, they were actual family members that were doing this to them.
I see,
These
yeah.
were the aunts and uncles type deals that were doing this to him. And I mean, they went as far as just saying that he was handcuffed to the pole down in the basement, a using the bathroom in a corner in a pot. I mean, there was a lot of things within the actual graphic novel that they s- they may have hinted towards he may have had to done in the actual show.
Yeah.
But they didn't actually say like this is how he was actually being treated completely. You had to actually connect those dots.
I had a feeling, as horrendous as his environment was, and it was pretty, even what they showed was pretty, like, uncomfortable, kinda made me a little uneasy, but I even then, I still had a feeling like Netflix might be holding back. I imagine that the graphic novel from the late '80s, early '90s might have been even more even darker, honestly.
Yeah, it was definitely darker. So I
Um,
appreciated how they kind of tiptoed around that, honestly.
yeah, that's fine by me. I got the point, for sure. In the dream realm, we've got a kind of a story arc too between Lucian and Morpheus. How Lucian is, when Morpheus is gone, Lucian really kind of took the reins, right?
Yeah, well,
And
she was forced to.
yeah, yeah, but she did a good job and she stepped up. And now that Morpheus is back, he totally expects to, like, that's all well and done. Like, I'm the guy.
Yeah, I'm the
um,
one in charge. And the one thing I did like right out the gate, though, 'cause remember how I said there was a scene missing when Morpheus came back to the dreaming world when
yeah,
he escaped,
yeah,
and it was the census.
yes,
And right here in episode 7, boom, they gave me the census. I'm like, that's awesome. So I was waiting to hear two names. I was waiting to hear Brute and Glup. They're nightmares.
yeah,
And I didn't get them. And then that had me lost now. I was like, how are they going to deal with Jed's nightmares or dreams?
right.
Because those two were huge parts within that. And they swapped two out for one, which I didn't know who it was. And I kind of like what they did, story arc wise with her.
Yeah.
But because yeah, there's a lot that takes place. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point of the show.
Yeah, she takes the consensus, and basically there are, what seems to me, I guess, 2 nightmares and a dream that are missing, right? What's the 3rd one's name? The Fields of it's a
The
place.
Fiddler's Green.
The Fiddler's Green, right,
And
which,
he's not even a dream. He's more of he's a place within dream.
right, but he's missing, or the place is missing, I guess, right? It's just,
Yes.
more conceptual stuff. So, we've got a nightmare by the name of Galt gone missing. Corinthian, of course, we know, still
We
missing
all know
because
the
he
Corinthian,
was
yeah.
missing even before Morpheus disappeared. And then the this place here, Fiddler's Green, also missing. And we're actually gonna, all three of these things we're gonna come in contact with, between Morpheus, Rose, and her little brother Jed. We're gonna come in contact with all three of these entities before the end of the season here. So
And I
I thought that was kind of
loved how
cool.
they did the Fiddler's Green in the show. I really enjoyed that because that held steadfast to the graphic novel. I love that.
I like that too, and that's another British character actor that played that character, and I thought he did a really good job too. It was very endearing. Um, so Rose, she travels. Yeah, she's kind of down and out. I mean, her mother just passed away, and her mother left her an apartment, but she's running out of money quick. She needs to find a job.
And she's
Um,
looking for her brother in the meantime too, with the money that she thought her mom left her, and I guess she burnt through it.
yeah. She heads to England. Apparently, somebody that has a pretty big estate wanted to interview her. To come up, and it turns out it's all kind of under false pretenses. That This is actually her great grandmother by the name of Unity. She tells her the story about how she got the sleeping sickness. Over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Somehow survived
Well,
and is
she's the last living like
survivor.
survivor of the sleeping sickness.
She comes with her friend Lyda, who, like I mentioned earlier, also had a husband who recently passed away. Lyda talked to her husband on the plane ride over there. She was kind of dreaming. Apparently, she dreams about her husband, and they get it on in their dreams. She's
Well,
really kind of coping.
that's That leaves a whole that's a whole different road you want to go down.
Coping
Uh,
and it's part of the grieving process, I guess. Her vivid
yeah,
dreams.
there's a part of her storyline that it all ties together with that same with Gulp, the nightmare,
Yeah.
with Jed's dream, uh, all that. They're basically that is what they kind of tinkered with, and they even separated that storyline into two essentially separate storylines within this final, you know, group of shows for the actual season.
You know what I liked about this episode too? We had little pops of stuff for the previous episodes, like the Fates, how the Fates drop in and
Yeah,
talk to Rose Walker. I thought that scene was pretty cool. We've got who is the this Mervyn pumpkin-headed guy in the realm? Is he somebody? Is there more of him in the books?
I was not familiar with Mervyn. I really wasn't. And you know who voices him?
Mark Hamill. I never
Yes.
miss his voice. Yeah.
Yes, I was waiting to see if you caught that or not, but yeah, Mark Hamill is the one that voiced him. I wasn't familiar with him. I liked him. He seems like he was more like the groundskeeper almost
Right. Or a
in
maintenance
the
man or something.
in the dreaming realm.
Yeah. But I thought that character was cool. I thought the effects were pretty neat. So there's rumors in the dream realm or the dreaming of a vortex, something called a vortex. Abel tells Lucian about it as she's doing this census, and she brings it up to Morpheus, and Morpheus is like, "Yeah, yeah, it's happening."
Chip, I
There's
know about it. I'm kind of got my eye on it. Just kind of
yeah,
watching.
there is a vortex out there. We learned that currently Rose Walker is this vortex that's walking around. In this episode, we don't really learn what that means, but it's something that's it's a big deal. It's a big deal in the dreaming. That's why they're all
It only
kind of
happens what once or twice every 1,000 years or something like that.
right.
So it's something that can completely destroy the realm of dreaming.
And then pretty much the only introduction left in this episode is the beginnings of the serial convention. We go by a diner. Corinthian stops there. These serial killers basically that are looking to get to Corinthian's attention. They want him to be the guest of honor for this convention.
Oh, we see Mr. Nimrod, Funland, and the Good Doctor. I was so pumped when we seen Nimrod. I had a fun time with him. He seemed in the graphic novel so like uncomfortable and awkward. I was like, how are they going to pull this off? And brilliantly, brilliantly. And I mean, the Good Doctor is not one I was familiar with, but
Right.
I can get on board with it. She fits right in with the rest of them. Funland,
He was creepy.
that's a
Yeah.
creepy dude. And yeah, I was pleased. And I didn't like how they meant there. That was a change that they did
Mhm.
because they didn't have to get the Corinthians' attention in the graphic novel. He
Okay.
heard of what was going. He showed up. When he showed up there, they found out that they lost what was the serial killer collective
The
that they lost?
boogeyman?
No, not the boogeyman. The boogeyman never showed up. An actual different guy was actually portraying him.
Yeah.
It was the family man.
Oh, the family man. Yeah, he was the original guest of honor. Yeah.
He didn't show up, and then they were able to convince the Corinthian to be the guest of honor.
Mhm.
So they didn't actually seek him out. They didn't try to copycat him. All that was changed for the show.
I see. Okay. So that pretty much wraps up episode 7. That's kind of the major events that happened in this kind of an introduction, a big introduction to what the threads are going forward in the rest of these 3 episodes that we have remaining. Chapter 8 called Playing House. It's what's her Rose finds herself in the dreaming. She kind of steps into Morpheus's lair by, Lucian's and Morpheus's surprise, like, oh, hello.
Yeah, she's just kind of standing in the actual throne room.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, who are you?" And then they realize who she is, and they start talking to her. And not Lucian, but Morpheus starts playing nice. He's like, he knows what his end game is. He knows what he has to do.
Right.
But I think he knows there's something else going on outside of what's going on, outside the obvious. And I think that's what bugged Lucian. So I don't think Lucian was looking at it point A to point B. Knock her out, we're good.
Right. Yeah.
But there was the through line to get to, well, if he knocked her out, would I don't want to get to that far because that's going to ruin the last episode.
Kind of, yeah. And there's basically it's a big game of
Man,
chess here that we're dealing with that we find
yeah.
out at the end of this season. We check back in on Jed, who's basically having these dreams. This kind of threw me here when they started to go into Jed's dream realm. After the first few scenes, I got it immediately, but I was like, "Who's this lady that's helping him? Why is he a Sandman superhero? He's in a basement." Then it started to click, like, "Oh, wait a second, this is how Jed's coping with the horrors of his life. Is that when he goes to sleep, he's dreaming." But it didn't line up to the fact that Lucian had said that Jed they haven't seen Jed at all, like sleeping or in the waking realm. So I'm like, if they don't see him in the dreaming, then how is he having these dreams? And it's
Okay,
cleared up later
this
in the
is
episode.
where it kind of went off the rails for me a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so within this dream that Jed's having, let's forget what you've seen.
Yeah.
Within this dream that Jed's having, this is where you meet Hector. And this is where you meet Rhodes' friend. I can't Lida.
Okay.
Those two are living within this dream. Hector is actually the Sandman.
Oh.
Brute and Glob are convincing him that he's the Sandman.
And he's dead?
Yes, he's dead. He's within this dream, just like he is in the show. He's within the dream. He's kind of living in this dream, even though
Right.
that his like physical form is gone.
Okay.
Brute and Glob built up all these like traps and everything to block Jed's consciousness from Morpheus. So
Ah,
Morpheus can't connect to him when he's dreaming, so he can't find him in the waking or the sleeping.
right.
So Brute and Glob are trying to escape the realm of the dreaming by living within this actual manifestation that they've made.
I see. Okay.
And once Morpheus figures it out, there's rules Morpheus have to abide by that he actually made to get into this area. So he's going through all these traps and all these barriers that Brute and Glob put in place. And while he's going, he's impressed. He's like, he knows what they did, and he is impressed by what they did because they've been watching.
Right.
But he still knew he had to go ahead and basically take care of Brute and Glob.
Yeah.
And it didn't say exactly what they did, if I don't remember, but I think he basically sent them back into like the darkness or whatever it is for however long, hit their punishment.
Right. Basically what he does to this demon, or not demon, this nightmare Gult
Yeah.
later in this episode's kind of banished.
But those two are actually the ones that kill Jed's aunt and uncle. Well, there's two.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not the Corinthian who kills him. They're the ones that kill him.
I see.
So there's a bunch of different. Lida is pregnant. Uh, Morpheus says he'll come back to to claim what is his. That was something that was pulled from it.
Right.
He basically he takes care of Hector. He calls him "you little dream." Oh, they call you the Sandman. Pretty much, that's cute.
Yeah.
Just dialogue back and forth like that. So this was the biggest change within it, and they changed it mainly to continue the storyline of Lida within the show, and they changed it to continue the storyline within, I think, for the Corinthian.
And it sounds to me it's like they needed to make some changes to truncate it. I mean, they needed to shorten it because expanding on this the way you're talking about, probably I don't know if they would have been able to fit that properly within this four episode arc here. So it sounded like they kind of needed to smush some storylines together.
And that's why I was like, I understood, because if they went as far as putting Brute and Glob in
Yeah.
and basically adding everything that I just basically interjected into this episode,
Right.
there would have been so much more time and changes that would have to take place, that it would have had to go from a 10 episode season to a 11 to 12 episode season, which would not have been bad.
Yeah, that would have been fine by me. Yeah. Basically, Unity, she hires Rose. Rose is ecstatic to have a new family. She thought all her family was past besides Jed. She's super thrilled immediately to have a great grandmother in her life. Unity hires her and Lida to travel across to back to the U.S. Down to Florida because that's where she thinks Jed may still
And
be.
that was the last time that she actually seen Jed, lived together with Jed, was in that house in Florida.
Exactly, yeah. So that's where we find Rose. She ends up at this kind of bed and breakfast house, meeting all like this kooky bunch of characters. I
I
assume,
loved all these characters. These characters were carbon copies from the book, and
yeah,
I loved how her and Hal become like this. Like they
mm,
talk about at the end of the season about moving back to New York.
yeah,
They go together. So this
Okay.
relationship continues,
I gotcha, okay.
and it's such it's a lovely a combination of people. I loved how they were doing it. I loved how seeing him. So I wasn't sure how they were going to portray him,
Yeah.
but seeing the two like dark sisters, like ish with the spiders and everything.
Yes.
That was Barbie and Ken.
Right.
I mean, I loved all. As weird as this sounds, I loved all of that because it is just as weird as the book.
Okay, so that's what it felt like to me, and I've never read the book, but these characters felt very. I've read characters like this, like kooky like this, in like Frank Miller novels and stuff from that era, like late '80s. They felt very late '80s, like The Cure. It's just that era and kind of Tim Burton kooky characters.
Yeah,
Like I got that sense right away, and yeah, I liked them too. My only thing is that I was a little unsure about them at first because they felt so familiar to Rose immediately. They were like almost half expecting her, like, "Oh, hey, Rose," like, and just talking to her as though they've known her for years. I almost felt as like, are these people that are trying to like infiltrate her life? Are these like nightmares or something like
yeah.
nefarious in disguise or something? And it doesn't seem to be that way by the end of it, but that just kind of struck me as how familiar they felt to her pretty immediately.
And I think you can just lean right on what Hal said right out the gate. You know, they were talking for so long, and they hit it off so well, and they were talking, and then basically he was telling everybody in the house, so everyone in the house knew she was coming. And I guess between the conversations that he had, where they just felt like basically like family out the gate. So I bought it, and it was so similar to the way things played out within the book. I was fine.
They start posting flyers everywhere, looking for Jed. Rose and Lyta go and visit the foster care agent to see if they can wring out any information from her. She doesn't give them anything. One thing I did want to mention is like this show is absolutely filmed in the UK it's funny, like the first half of the season, most people were British, didn't notice anything. It felt like a British production. It was totally fine. This second part of the season, um, I just every British actor, I just heard them doing American accents, and, like, it's just, like, constantly, it's just like, "Oh, that is a British person trying to speak American." It just felt like that the entire time.
That's funny because I think I must have been so dialed in on what was going on,
Yeah,
it was going right past me. Like if I now that if I when I rewatched a series,
right.
now that you've said that, I'm probably gonna pick up on some of these things.
But yeah, they post flyers to looking for Jed. Lyta goes back like the next day or so to talk to this agent once again because the agent didn't really give them anything besides the fact that she's with some of her Jed is with some of his father's friends now. I guess the father had passed away.
Yeah, the fellow died somehow. I don't exactly remember how or why or when or the whole deal.
But Lyda, she basically convinces the agent to at least go and check up on Jed. Thankfully, I mean, Jed's in a rough spot, so it's like somebody, yeah, why don't you check in on the kid, please, for the
Yeah,
love of Pete, go knock
and
on
the
the
thing
door.
and the thing is within the book, they do that.
Hmm.
They don't tell her anything. They go in. They just go ahead and they check in on him. It's not a big fight. It's none of that.
Hmm.
And that's how they find because they call and they say we're coming, just like they did in the show, and they find the scene that they found. So it wasn't a big blow up between Rose and the social worker or any of that. So, but like I said again, it's not. It's something very very small that was
Yeah,
used for narrative reasons.
right.
I'm good.
And throughout this entire time, the Corinthian, he's just like tracking down. He's on the hunt for Rose, basically.
Yeah, the vortex.
Um,
He's looking for the he fears Morpheus, and the
right.
only way he can defeat Morpheus is if he is able to find this vortex.
He ends up going to the UK in Sussex, England, talking to Unity. Thankfully, he left Unity alive. But he's able to pull information out of Unity where Rose's current whereabouts are. He goes and finds her in Florida, but Matthew is there. Happens to be there in the moment that Matthew was talking to Rose. Corinthian spies on that, and he's like, "Nope, I don't want eyes
He
on me."
he
Um,
bounces. He knows exactly who Matthew was. He's
yeah,
like, "Yep, nope, I'm out." And this is
Corinthian.
after the interaction he had with Hal. Him and
Yes,
Hal. I was like, "Oh no, how they can't kill Hal. There's no way. If they kill Hal, I'll be pissed."
yeah.
There's a specific way he goes out, and
Oh
that's
no!
that.
Hey, spoiler alert!
It's a long.
Hey,
Well, yeah,
Uh,
sorry. No, it's
See, we've been getting complaints that you know too much about this. You're dropping anyway. Hal is just fine, everybody. Hal makes it
he's
through
living
the end
his
of the season.
best, drag queen life.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so Corinthian, he goes from Unity's place over to Florida, sees these flyers, gets to the social worker, kills her. He finally does make a kill. Pulls the information of where Jed is actually located, goes there. By the end of this episode, he pulls Jed out of that circumstance. He's the one that kills Barnaby and I forget what her name is.
Aunt something, aunt, yeah.
And something or other. Either way, they're dead. They
Yeah,
weren't
they're
doing much for
yeah,
Jed.
not really of any consequence related to show. But,
Yeah.
let's go back and let's talk about the dream that Joe was because we didn't really talk about was it named Glob? I don't remember the
Galt.
Galt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they changed that. And what'd you think of him, like, just dismissing, like, her, "I don't wanna be a nightmare. I wanna be a dream."
Well, yeah, that's interesting. So Rose, she basically starts to do some dream walking of her own, going through her bed and breakfast friends, their dreams. Finally, Morpheus kind of catches up to her, and they go into Jed's dream. Jed is dreaming about being a superhero. They make it here with Morpheus in tow, and yeah, well, to me, it felt like this Galt character was a nightmare at some point. Didn't really like being that anymore. Almost kind of had an existential crisis like Corinthian. I mean, Corinthian chose a different path and embraced a different path, but they're both feeling unsatisfied with their place in the universe, you know?
Yeah.
Corinthian too. But Galt decided like, hey, I'd rather like this child is in need. I'd rather support them in this dream realm and like help them cope with their everyday life by giving them something to look forward to when they fell asleep, like,
Yeah, because she's
empowering
manifesting
them.
herself to look like their mom,
Yes,
which is
yeah.
comforting,
Mhm.
which, I mean, that says a lot right there. But I love the line, she's like, "I've changed, you have changed." Like, he pointed to him, he's like, "I know you've changed in these 100 years.
Yeah,
So why couldn't any of else of us have changed?"
right. He's at this point, Morpheus is still not having it. He's basically he ends up banishing, Galt by the end of this
To
episode.
darkness or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and, you can't really tell by Lucian's reaction in the moment, but I don't think she is loyal, to Morpheus, but she kinda questions his choices here and there as far as, like, "Was that a bridge too far?" Like, "Come on,
Yeah.
dude."
Well, real quick, guys, if you're joining us here for the first time, thanks for tuning in, checking out what we thought of the Sandman. I'm a diehard fan of it. Sean is actually finding it for the first time through this Netflix series. But hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We've done two other. We did a one of the first episode. We broke down episode, I think it was 2 through 6, and then this is that second half of the season. So check out those other videos, see what you think, drop a comment. If you're watching live, you can comment live. We love comments. We'll go ahead and respond to them live here on the air. But also check out our other content we got up. We're going to be doing things of Andor, House of the Dragon, Lord of the Rings, all that fun stuff that's coming. We're going to cover all of it. So if you enjoy that, we would love to have you be a part of the community. Hit that subscribe button so we can you can join us along the way.
Chapter 9, called Collectors, it may as well have been called the Serial Convention because that's kind of the whole of this episode.
Yeah,
The Corinthian, he's got Jed. He's heading from Florida up north to Atlanta, Georgia, to this convention that's going on. He was been invited as the guest of honor, and he decides he wants to go and show up and attend this thing. He's finally getting applauded for instead of being chided by Morpheus or being afraid. He gets people worshiping him basically,
yeah,
saying how
yeah.
great he is.
Oh yeah, and I love this. I love how they did this. I love the hotel. I love them walking in. Him waiting in line. Funland seeing Jed. I'm like, oh dear God, how they gonna handle this?
Yeah.
And then being pulled aside. I love how the Corinthian came behind Jed. It's like he's under my protection. And Funland knows exactly who the Corinthian was because he was one of the ones that kind of baited him into this.
Right. Yes.
So as soon as he stood up behind him, I was like, he's under my protection. If something goes sour, you got to answer to me. And then
Um,
we called him Fun to start. Remember, he said, "Okay, Mr. Fun," and it's Fun Land, Fun Land. I was like, "Oh, he's talking back to the Corinthian."
that
That
it's funny you mentioned that because that scene in itself, I was like, "Oh," I marked in my brain like, "Oh, these 2 are gonna have another interaction down the line for sure." They were setting something up there, but yeah, so basically he's got a hotel room under Rose's name. He sticks Jed in there. He's like, "Kid, stay in here, you know, for your own good. Stay in the hotel room. I'll be back in a bit." And Jed doesn't. He ends up
well, he's been caged up for the past like 8 years.
right.
Would you expect him to stay in there? I wouldn't.
No, any kid, I think, any kid would probably want to like walk around and stuff. No kid actually does what you ask him to do.
Oh no, not not completely.
But he's kind of spying around. This is not a safe place for him because it's funny. You walk the hallways of this convention and you just overhear these conversations that these people are having, and they're all just like just this kind of. If you imagine a serial killer convention, the kind of conversations that would be had, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, but yeah. So I think we go back actually down to like the opening like convention. Nimrod walks on the stage. Are we are we to that point now?
Yeah, there's that. Meanwhile, Rose is here. Corinthian called Rose on the
Oh,
drive
that's right.
up here. He's like, "Hey, I've got Jed. I found your flyer, and yeah, just come on up here. Stop by. We'll be here." Just acting very nice. Rose is elated. During this news, Lyda reveals to her that she's pregnant. I guess she was impregnated in her dream by her husband. Very shocking things, but Rose kind of rolls with it because it's like, well, apparently I'm some kind of vortex thing, so I guess it's making sense.
Yeah, so nothing can surprise me right now.
Yeah, they're just kind of rolling with these big shocking revelations. But anyway, Lyda can't make it with her. So Gilbert, who's another resident of the B&B, we hadn't really seen him up to this point except for one scene where he helps Rose outside of a nightclub,
And
protect her from danger.
I like how they use that because that is something that's how he originally meets her. She's
Hmm.
walking home, not so much in the back of the nightclub, but she's walking home. She takes a shortcut,
Yeah,
and since we don't know this at the time, but since she's a vortex, all these dreams are drawn to her.
right. Yeah.
So that's how he kind of finds her, and he protects her on the rest of the walk home. And they kind of get talking and realize, they live in the same place, and a bond kind of grows between the two.
It's interesting because any other show, it would be sort of very coincidental, like all these things just happen to be surrounding Rose's life, but they actually explain it within the character herself because she is a vortex. All these things and all these circumstances and all these crazy characters are revolving around her because she is the vortex. It's
Yes.
like any other show would be like, oh well, that's some kind of coincidence. Like that seems very writerly,
Well,
but
it's
here
one
they
of
kind
those
of
things.
lampshade it.
They set the rules to their show, and they followed their own rules.
Right.
Some shows will set their own rules and not follow their own rules. That's when you kind of like, okay,
Yeah, but because we're aware that she's a vortex and she's going to be drawing these things into it, doesn't feel as bad when all these things start happening to
yeah,
and around Rose. So yeah, she heads up there with Gilbert. Gilbert's this, portly British gentleman. Like, and I emphasize gentleman, just like a heck of a nice guy.
yes,
Uh, bores the heck out of her on the ride there about talking about literature and authors and stuff. But a great person to accompany her, it seems. Especially in this environment, like you need any protection from these creeps. But
but did he
yeah, they.
protect her in this environment or not? I think he caught a glimpse of one dude and bailed.
Oh, that's true. I think yeah, you're right. Ultimately, yeah, that's the
He didn't
case.
protect. I mean, he protected her in the alley in the show, but as soon
Yeah,
as he set eyes and him and the Corinthian locked eyes and they knew who each other were, Gilbert bounced.
he did, but quick. And luckily, I mean, he did. He did the right thing because ultimately it brought Morpheus to the scene. But yeah, that's true. I guess he didn't do much protecting.
Now there
Maybe he
was
did. The
thing.
greatest protection is Morpheus.
Now he gave her. Now see, this is before Rose knew who Morpheus was.
Yeah.
He dropped Morpheus's name to her on a letter when he left. The note he left actually at the desk was, "If you get in trouble, say this name."
Mm.
And when she got, I think I'm not. She got into a bind. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure if it was with the Corinthian or not. And she called Morpheus. No, it was with some of the other collectors,
Oh.
and she called Morpheus, and that's kind of how that whole ball got rolling within in the book.
I see, okay. But
So
in
he
the
gave her
show,
some
she is already
protection.
aware of
Yeah,
Morpheus a long
we're way
time by
past
this
that
point.
point with her learning
Yeah.
who Morpheus was.
Was Jed at the Serial Convention in the books? This whole thing with Corinthian having Jed and waiting on Rose to get there?
I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
I'm trying to think how the Jed storyline even came to a point. Yeah, because I don't think Rose was at. Okay, so it's all coming back to me. The whole thing that was happening with Rose and finding Jed and the serial convention were happening simultaneously.
Mhm.
So Jed and the serial convention never happened. They never came together. And Rose actually wound up at the serial convention with Gilbert because their car broke down.
Mhm.
So they wound up here staying overnight waiting for the authorities to call her. So she was waiting on a phone call about Jed while she was here.
Oh,
So
I
Jed
see,
never
okay.
actually seen this location.
Gotcha. Okay, see, that's a big difference too. Yeah, all it seems like a lot of the Jed stuff is very different
Yeah,
and placed
the
differently.
whole dollhouse storyline they reconfigured for
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah, so Gilbert, aka Fiddler's Green, Gilbert is this missing place. So they're all accounted for. The three that were unaccounted for in the beginning of this story arc, they're accounted for now. Galt has been banished. Corinthian is here at this convention, and Fiddler Green is back and happy to be in the dreaming once again.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so Morpheus arrives on the scene here, and it gets a little crazy. Oh, this is Gilbert checking in here with Rose. But that's essentially kind of how we end this episode. Is that Gilbert is bounced. Jed walks into Corinthian murdering that blogger guy that you mentioned that
well,
was
yeah, we
posing
got
as the boogeyman.
the boogeyman,
Yeah,
which wasn't truly the boogeyman because Corinthian knew he's
right.
dead.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, we got the whole meeting of them. So we had Nimrod come up on the stage, basically told all these collectors they don't crap where they eat. So
right.
there's no collecting within, I think he said a 200-mile radius of where they were at. So they can all basically stay safe. And then we find out the boogeyman isn't the boogeyman. So Nimrod, the good doctor, work hand in hand with Corinthian to go ahead and take him out.
Well, Jed's freaked out, of course, as he would be.
Yeah, 'cause he walked in on it.
He books it. He runs into Funland, who's more than happy to like set him aside. Come to my room, kid. I'll take care of you.
Yeah, yeah.
take care of you. And then of course, and thank goodness, this is when Rose finally, after this whole episode, you're just wanting Rose to run into Jed this whole time. She finally does at the end of the episode. They start getting chased by Funland. Corinthian comes, kills Funland,
I
and
mean, the Corinthian is terrifying.
mhm.
I think so is the good doctor and Nimrod. I mean, they're both those two are pretty scary as well. I thought Funland was the scariest of all the collectors that we've seen.
He seemed pretty real, like, pretty
Yes,
spot on, like, this guy is out there somewhere.
real, unhinged, the whole deal. There was something that you can see winding up on a 60 minutes episode.
Yeah. Um,
Well, even
so
his explanation about where he finds kids. His
oh,
whole
yeah,
like
it was a little too detailed. It was a little like, "Alright."
this is a little sick here. We can move on now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can brush him with broad strokes. I get it. You don't
Yeah,
need
we
to
understand
paint
what
in
he's
the
doing.
finer details about this guy. That's it for chapter 9. We move on to chapter 10, Lost Hearts. And thanks to Fiddler's Green, aka Gilbert, Morpheus is on the scene here, ready to confront Corinthian.
I loved it when he finally like he made his like triumphant like return, just
Hmm.
walking down there. And I don't even know. I feel like all the collectors have no idea what's going on. Like he put them all like into a trance, and
That's
it's
what it
just
seemed like to
him
me, as if
and
they
the
were almost
Corinthian.
like asleep. Yeah. It was just him and Corinthian. I want to ask you though, in this scene, um, Corinthian pulls a knife on Sandman, and Sandman's just like whatever. He brought a knife to a dream fight, like he was like
Yeah,
kind of whatever about it. Corinthian ends up stabbing him though, and it does hurt. Is there something more to that? Because basically, it just seems like his power is waning or something. Like what is that about?
it was the vortex. It was basically in the shows confines. It was the stronger and stronger that Rose was becoming, the weaker and weaker, in essence, Dream was becoming. So
Mhm.
he's being able to be defeated.
Right.
And that wasn't something that took place within the book.
Okay.
So that was something that was a narrative thing they did, and they did it to show, Rose becoming stronger, not trusting either of them, putting all the walls back up. And the minute she did that, it basically gave Morpheus all the power that he had right back to him, and he did away with the Corinthian.
This scene is after the Corinthian gives a big keynote speech here in front of all the collectors, which they loved. He was loving the moment, and of course, that's the moment where Morphine comes in to just ruin it all for him.
It's like, yep, nope, you had your moment in the sun. Now it's time to go home.
Yeah, and Corinthian's like, "Well, what are you gonna do? Put me back in their dreams?" And no, he essentially banishes Corinthian. It seems like Corinthian's done for now. Does he?
Yeah,
Are you aware? Does Corinthian come back at all, or is this it for him?
uh to be honest, I'm not 100% certain. I like how he held onto the skull, and he even said he's not the first variation.
Hmm.
So I have a inkling that they'll go ahead and he'll be back in a later, you know, story, but I'm not sure where or when or how long it takes. 'Cause he even gives, that skull to Lucian,
Hmm.
because he's now developing dreams and everything differently than he did prior.
Um, Throughout the last couple episodes too, we realize that it's Morpheus's end game here that he needs to. At first, it seemed as though he was kind of helping Rose, kind of on her side. But then we transition to the fact that, like, no, at the end of the day, he's probably going to have to get rid of this Rose person,
Yeah.
this vortex, to save all of humanity. Apparently, she's just kind of crumbling the walls between realities, and it's not a good thing. And he needs to get rid of her. So, before he destroys Corinthian, there's a scene between the three of them, Rose, Corinthian, and Morpheus, where they're both explaining, both almost kind of like a devil and an angel on her shoulder. Like Morpheus is trying to explain to her how important it is and what she's actually doing, and Corinthian's just trying to, convince her to, like, no, go your own way. You got this. Of course, he's got the alternative mind about the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And she basically says, "Enough of this." She walks out on both of them. She's like, "If I'm as powerful as you say I am, then I'm going to do things my own way." And she kind of, she does. She walks out to leave them by themselves. I thought
Yeah.
that was a big power move. Like she's
Yeah,
like,
it's once you
"Peace."
put the walls back up, just pieced out. and then
Yeah,
the,
I was like, "Okay, all right."
and then the Corinthian seeing his end. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
Did
I
that
mean,
happen in the
honestly,
book?
no.
Okay.
So I mean, it is because once the actual serial conference convention was done, we dove deeper and deeper into what Unity was, what happened during Unity's time,
Yeah.
why wrote the explanation started rolling a little quicker than it did actually in the show.
That's how the rest of this episode is too. I mean, one little footnote: the serial killers, they kind of snap out of it. Morpheus forces them to, like, feel guilty about their previous actions, and they go out and they start confessing. They start calling the police on themselves. They start committing suicide. Basically, all this whole convention of serial killers. Most of them are not making out of this parking lot.
Yeah,
So that was kind of a fitting end there. Um, but yeah, this story kind of ramps up here because, Rose and Morpheus, they have to decide what the heck's going to be the end game here, because she's asleep, she's traveling through dreams again, but the walls between the dreams are starting to come down. All of her B&B friends start seeing each other in each other's dreams.
yeah.
Big swirly whirly vortex starts, sucking them all up, including Jed, Hal, Barbie, Ken. um, in Barbie, I want to mention Barbie's dream. It was very different than the other dreams. The other being bed and breakfast guests' dreams were very, like, personal. You can mention it was a part of their life, or a dream that they had, or a memory they were dreaming about. Jed's, he was a superhero trying to cope. Barbie's was very ethereal and fantastical, and was mentioning characters that were, like, way beyond what you would assume a person like Barbie. She would assume, like, she'd be dreaming about shopping or something, but
Yeah,
her dream was very different. I did take a note of that. The show itself does not expound upon it.
it had
But is there more to
no
that?
time to.
Yeah.
I was shocked they gave us anything from Martin Tenbones.
Hmm.
And there were I mean, she basically goes to what they call the land of the cuckoo.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's when you think out there, that story I can't even get into it, honestly. It's just it's so much
Right.
that they get captured, the cuckoo takes over, Morpheus has got to intervene. There's a lot that takes place within that storyline, and there was no way they could touch that. And the fact that they gave us her walking with Martin Tenbones, I was blown away.
Yeah. Um. So Rose and Morpheus, they're kind of at a standstill. Like, what do we do? I get that I'm breaking down the barriers here, and it's not good, but I also don't want to die. Gilbert shows up, aka Fiddler's Green. He's like, "Hey, take me. I'll gladly sacrifice myself for her." And Morpheus, kind of refuses. Like that's just not going to work. He ends up becoming that place again, Fiddler's
Yeah,
Green. He explains to
because
Rose how he was that place personified, basically.
yeah, well, he told Rose that Morpheus told Rose she can stay. She is welcome to stay
Yeah,
within the dreaming. That's a place that she can call home, and that's when the Fiddler's Green Gilbert said, walk within my meadows, sit underneath my trees.
right.
Everywhere you are within this area, I am with you, type deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was very nice. And look, Morpheus is trying. At
Yeah,
the end of the day, like he knows what needs to be done, but he doesn't hold this girl in like contempt. He doesn't have any hatred towards Rose Walker. If anything, he understands like this is a really difficult situation. This sucks, and it's like I'm gonna do what I can for her, but ultimately, like she can't be this vortex anymore.
yeah,
Um, and so we then zap to Unity, who's asleep. She starts dreaming. She finds herself in Lucian's library. She asks for a book about what the rest of her life would have been had she not had the sleeping sickness. And through, I guess, a conversation that happens off screen with Lucian, they kind of fill each other's stories a bit. And she shows up to the standoff with Morpheus and Rose, and she explains, like you had mentioned before, she was supposed to be the original Vortex. Unity was, and because of the sleeping sickness, it didn't happen, and that got passed on to her great grandchild. Um, and not only that, while she was in the dreaming, she was impregnated by a man with golden eyes, and Morpheus was quick to take mental note of that.
yep. He connected the dots that real quick. You knew
Yeah.
exactly what was going on at that point.
Yeah, and us as the audience, we're not quite, I think, caught up to that point, and later they really, unless you're probably a book reader, then of course, but that was a little hint about what happens later. But so basically, yeah, Unity tells Rose, like, give me what makes you the vortex. Like, this is a dream, sweetie. You can do anything. Just reach inside
Yeah,
yourself and hand it off. She does. She gives her this, what ends up being like a heart-shaped glass structure kind of thing,
yeah,
which is another clue that, like, looking back on it, was like, "Oh, that's
yeah.
another clue." But, yeah, she takes it, and, Unity becomes the vortex. Unity dies, so the vortex is no longer a threat to the realms. And, Rose is able to live on, become a writer, live in the estate that Unity leaves her with her brother, with her friend, and, just, like, hopefully live happily ever after this. What do you think?
You lost me. I'm sorry. I completely spaced out now. I was listening to you. So yeah, when Unity basically passes away, the need to kill Rose is gone because she takes on the vortex portion of it, and then
Yeah.
that's that. And they wake up and things kind of go on their way, and that's basically from that point on. You see Morpheus go ahead and call on his brother Desire. And we're like, oh, this
Yeah.
is gonna get good.
Yeah, Rose is able to live happily ever after as a writer, and yeah, Morpheus knows exactly who the heck maybe had the machinations. What was going on here? Oh, stop my can here. What happened there? But yeah, what happened to my screen? It disappeared.
We're having some minor technical difficulties there.
There, this is
Oh,
the scene.
there
Here
we
it is.
go.
Morpheus, he shows up in Desire's realm, basically like, "Hey, I know what you did here," and I guess this is how I interpret it, but it seems as though this whole thing was like a setup from Desire to essentially get rid of Morpheus,
Oh, the
or to
whole show
have
was.
to have Morpheus kill Rose, which ultimately Rose was connected and one of the Endless, because Rose ended up being, a descendant of Desire. And because these entities, these Endless, cannot kill each other, it's against the rules. Then ultimately, unbeknownst to Morpheus, he would have been breaking one of these rules, and that would have been very bad for him. Is that
Essentially,
right?
yeah. That's
Okay.
yeah, in a nutshell, that's yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. But I love how, like, he's holding him there. He's like, "You would have you stronger than me and Death and, what was the other one? He named off a couple of them, and
Yeah.
he's like, "No." He's like, he
Right.
knows he doesn't stand a chance. He's gotta find a back door. That's why he was the one responsible for him getting caught in the first place.
Yeah.
I think he was the one that basically twisted the spell. So instead of catching Death like they wanted, they caught Dream. And then the whole thing that happened here.
Yeah, so you start to get the family dynamic here, that Desire and Despair, essentially, because Despair
Yes,
seems to
thank you.
be hanging on to Desire, as those two seem close. But
They're
Desire,
twins.
oh, they're twins. Desire and Despair are. Oh,
Yes.
okay. They seem to be out on Morpheus, like they are not. They want to get rid of him and hurt him. And not only that, so we have the antagonists here, maybe going forward, as far as who's going to play, opposite of Morpheus. But a stinger at the end of this episode as well. We get Lucifer Morningstar once again, who talks to, I guess,
Azel.
Legion or something within
Azel.
Hell. That
Azel.
Oh, Azel. Okay. So basically, she's going to be, up Morpheus's butt too. It's not looking good for him. He's got a bunch of people with their
I'm
eyes on him.
really curious where they're going because they held pretty close to the novel.
Yeah.
And I feel that they're gonna start deviating. I really do. From where from the source material, because Azel was essentially, well, I think I told you last time we got together. It was Beelzebub, Azel, and Morningstar, Lucifer in
Yeah.
hell. So there was no like, I've got to come to you. There were three heads ruling.
Right.
So the fact that he had to come to her is already changed that dynamic. And I think they missed an opportunity. They introduced this character within episode 6.
Yeah.
We got nothing more from him. And I don't know if they're going to plan on doing anything the next season, but I feel like they should have ended the season with us seeing Shakespeare being summoned on by by Morpheus,
Hmm.
and he invites the fairy queen and king to come in, and then there's a play that takes place and everything. It's this kind of it's really fantastical, but it's him basically making good with another realm,
Okay.
and we don't see that within this here, and
Yeah.
we also see the payoff of Shakespeare. I think we should have seen something down that lines because we've seen a lot of enemies that he's going to have.
Yeah.
Who is he going to rely on besides Death?
Hmm.
So I think they just missed a minor little thing that could have wrapped the season up just a little bit better.
I want to thank you all for sticking with us if you have. So basically, they took a huge story arc, graphic novel, the Dollhouse series. They scrunched it down to a 4 episode arc, and then Chris and I took that 4 episode arc and scrunched it down to 53 minutes here. So I really appreciate you sticking with us. If the last 53 minutes didn't make sense at all, then I invite you to just go and watch the show. It makes a lot more sense than us just
Oh,
talking
either
about it.
way, watch the show. We need to get this
Yeah.
show as much ratings as we possibly can for Netflix,
Yeah.
so they do make another season of this because I'm all in. I'm gonna probably watch this a few more times.
So that was it. That was season one of the Sandman, something you've been looking forward to for a while. We got through it here with the binge model. It's tough, but we were able to break it down within pretty much 1 week's time of it coming out. That's a success. That's a big success for you, I think.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you this: as someone that was new to the series, new to everything to it, now that we're finished, what did you think?
Oh, I loved it. I'll definitely be in for season two. I love the scope of the characters that are in this thing. I love the different realms that you experience. I love the storytelling, especially the first part. And I honestly thought episode 6 was probably one of the finest episodes of television, period. Like that,
Yeah.
that was a great just episode of television. So I really enjoyed it. I think the show has a huge amount of potential going forward as well to tell expanding stories. Because Sandman, Sandman comics ran for a long time. I know there were just a couple story arcs and graphic novel pieces that were adapted for this season one, but I know the comics themselves, Neil Gaiman wrote on those for quite a long time. So I'll be happy to check into season two. Like you said, hopefully Netflix decides to continue with it because I enjoyed it.
I don't trust Netflix,
I don't
but
either.
uh, on the flip side of that, they did this complete justice. I love how they did it. I love how Neil Gaiman was involved in it the
Yeah,
whole way through. So if when they were making changes, they were making changes with his approval for the
right.
changes. So it's even though there were changes that I didn't completely like. I understood them, and it was for plot reasons for the show. I mean, this was probably my favorite thing I've watched on TV in a long time.
As far as an adaptation of source material, we've seen a lot of things, whether it be the Watchmen movie or some of Frank Miller, like Frank Miller's Sin City, George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones books, huge, HBO series that we watched. How does this rank as far as adapting the source material? Do you think it did it justice?
Oh, I think it absolutely did justice. There wasn't like if you brought up George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
there was so much in there in each of those books. There
Hmm.
was no way for them to satisfy everybody.
Right.
The graphic novels are a much smaller source material, so it's
Yeah.
easier to go ahead and adapt that almost verbatim in some ways
Hmm.
and have it work on television. That's exactly what they did. So as an adaptation of shows that I've watched, I've got to put this up towards the top.
Yeah. And I think it really benefited from having, the actual writer and creator, attached to it because without him, I don't think this would have been as successful. I think, there was a lot of heart put into this thing, and you could feel it from the visuals, from the acting, like they were all in
This was
100%.
a passion project, and you
Oh yeah.
absolutely felt it.
So that's gonna do it for our review and recap of The Sandman on Netflix. We are the Dad and Rock After Show. You're gonna see us back here talking about Rings of Power, talking about the House of Dragons, talking about Andor, and all the other big shows that are coming out. I know the wrapping up final third season of Ted Lasso will be out sometime within the next few months. Hopefully,
Oh, I
maybe we'll
can't
see.
wait for that. I'm looking forward to that one a lot.
But stay tuned here on the channel, Dad and Rock. Be sure to subscribe to us. We have trailer reactions. We have after shows like this one. We have all sorts of good content that we put out there.
There we go. And I think until we see you next time, I think it's time to say go ahead and keep it cheesy.
See ya.